Well, the first thing to say is that traffic is flowing, the streets are open, and in fact, this past weekend is the first time in quite a long time that we haven't seen any tear gas on the streets of Hong Kong. But that doesn't mean that this standoff is close to a resolution. Quite the opposite, in fact. This is now a stalemate in which both sides feel strong and emboldened. The police here, the authorities, have the unequivocal backing of Beijing, and the protesters have the support of a sizable chunk of the population. Let's just take a moment to remember how we got here. An increasingly heavy-handed crackdown by police, hundreds of tear gas rounds and rubber bullets, followed by increasingly radical responses from the protesters. They took over the airport. They surrounded people that they thought were pro-Beijing agents. And in response to that, Beijing itself, just last week, said unequivocally, look, if the Hong Kong authorities can't sort this out, we will step in and we will quell it, and back that up with a very visible show of military force just across the border from here in Shenzhen. So that was the context, and those were the stakes as the protesters prepared for yesterday's demonstration. It began as a protest against an extradition bill. 11 weeks on, this has become a movement with much more fundamental demands.
Free Hong Kong! Free Hong Kong! Democracy now! Democracy now! Free Hong Kong!
But after a heavy-handed crackdown by police, an increasingly radical response from protesters, and now a build-up of Chinese forces on the border, it felt like make or break for Hong Kongers trying to defend their freedoms from encroachments by Beijing. So the really key thing for the protesters today is numbers. They need to show that they still have mass support. And to that end, they're trying to fill up this park on this side and on this side until eventually it overflows into the streets. That point was quickly reached. As they started marching, the heavens opened. Luckily, in Hong Kong, the umbrella is also the symbol of freedom and democracy. At the head of the procession, we found Denise Ho. She sings cantopop, and she's a huge celebrity here.
We have been in face of excessive police brutality and even infiltrations of undercover police. People know that this is a tactic from the communist government to try to spread fear among us, and we want to tell them that this will not work.
Suddenly, Hong Kong is a sea of umbrellas. Just across the border, Chinese military exercises are aimed at scaring the protesters off the streets. Mainland officials have accused these people of showing signs of terrorism. Yes, people are nervous, some hiding their faces. But this march was about proving Beijing wrong.
We should never be afraid, because the police and the Beijing is threatening us. Hong Kongers should never be afraid of this.
And you're not afraid?
No, afraid.
I see you're not covering your face.
Because when we are afraid of this, we will start losing.
Right. What about you?
Yeah, actually I'm kind of afraid, but I think it is going to the protest is what we, as a Hong Kong people, we should do.
For hours and hours, they kept on coming, ordinary Hong Kongers, young and old. Recent scenes of chaos and violence had threatened to undermine their cause. This is a really important test for the protesters here, because after the violent scenes that we saw just a few days ago at the airport, it's crucial now that they show that this is a peaceful movement, that they show restraint. Restraint there was, and from the police too. They took a step back as well. Only as darkness fell did we see a few small groups of officers on guard at key locations. On a bridge over a highway, we met some of the younger, more radical protesters. An advance party on the lookout for squads of riot police. That's us. What's happening?
They tell us to leave.
Right. Are you scared?
No.
You're not scared?
we have no future already. We have to stand against them. The level of equipment is never balanced. We have only.
You've got umbrellas.
Yes.
Yeah.
They got baton.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you about yourself? Are you a student?
Yeah.
What do you study?
I study in secondary school.
You're a schoolboy.
Yeah.
This could have very serious consequences for your future.
I know, but once this law passed, I have no future.
Later, they gathered outside government headquarters. In previous weeks, this was the scene of clashes between the radicals and the police. They pointed their laser pens at the CCTV cameras. Many are convinced the authorities are using facial recognition software to identify them. They shone their torches into the darkened windows of the government offices. This is the point at which things have, in the past, got nasty. The protesters occupy the roads. The riot police disperse them. But now, a leaderless revolution is trying hard to forge a common strategy. The protesters wanted to achieve two things on Sunday: to come out in numbers and to keep the peace. On both fronts, they succeeded. Now the ball is with the authorities and with Beijing. How they respond will determine the future of Hong Kong.